All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, guys. Welcome to the animation study. And this sort of like a group study session, and rather like a study session. And I'm going to be sharing with you guys some of the interesting things I've learned about how to study other animations, what to look at, and I'm particularly excited about talking about Onward because it looks like it's gonna be a really dope movie. Chris Pratt, Tom Holland. That already sounds really cool. So, just to start off, I'm going to start off by quickly explaining what you should expect from an animation study. We're gonna go into some sketches. We're gonna talk about posing, and then we'll go into talking about the 12 principles of animation. Not necessarily explaining them, but just going quickly talking about the list itself, and then we'll look at how all this ties back into all the stuff that we're going to be doing with this study. And then finally we'll look at the clips that I had mentioned in the posts, and then that's pretty much it. So I hope you're ready. If you checked out the form, I had put a link on how you can download Blender. I also made a short video explaining how to install it and how to prepare the video so that you can be ready for this. So if you haven't checked that out, don't worry about it too much. I'm also going to go through it while I'm here, but the best you can do is just get Blender downloading now while I do the other stuff. So to help me with this presentation, I have I'm going to be using Blender. I'm going to be using Epic Pen to draw on top of Blender. I'm also going to use Keyframe Pro at some point. Maybe I might not, but if I do, that's also a really nice application for going through your footage and annotating on top of it. If it's paid though, if you're not down for buying that, you can actually use SyncSketch, which is another app. And SyncSketch is actually a website, and you can upload your video there, and then it lets you frame through stuff, check out the audio, you can draw on top, and other people can draw on top. The great thing about the sync side of SyncSketch is that it lets multiple people work on something at the same time. So as I drag the timeline, the timeline on your side is also going to move, and you'll also see me drawing on top. So it's really cool, and it's free to use. It needs paid. No, you don't really need to pay it. You can stay on free for a pretty long time. All right, cool. So let me just go straight into this because I don't want to spend too much time here. So So here we are, finally. Maybe I should have had this on screen while I was talking before, but that's okay. So what's an animation study, and what exactly do we want to achieve with it? The idea here is that we want to look at other works that people have done, and we want to try and analyze it and figure out exactly what they're doing and what's happening. And we're going to reference it with the stuff we've learned so far, as well as the stuff that has been mentioned in the books Illusion of Life, the 12 principles of animation. How are they being applied into work that's already existing? So that's number one. So understanding also how the poses are being done, how the story is being told, the nuances in the animation, that is the lags, the overlaps, the little things that are being done to help communicate the idea. The arcs, the way everything is moving in arcs, that's very important. We're looking at timing, and we're looking at clarity and silhouettes. So clarity, silhouettes, understanding poses, all these things are pretty much the same thing, but they're also very, very important when it comes to making something that looks good and also communicates at the same time, because that's the most important thing we're doing when we're animating. We're bringing stuff to life, and we're trying to communicate at the same time. We're trying to say that this person is sad, or this person is happy, or something even as simple as saying he's going to pick up that object, or this person is doing this action. All that is important when we're bringing our stuff to life. And most importantly, we want to improve our eyes. We want to improve how we see things. When we watch someone else's animation, we're trying to improve the way we see how the bouncing ball is being applied, how the physics is happening, how the hands are moving, how the legs are moving. All this stuff is important, so we want to improve how we can see them so that we can better apply it into our own work. Part of the exercise we're going to do is trying to spot poses faster. I'm going to explain it when I get into gestures. Gestures, you tell me. But I want to explain more on that when we get there. So yeah, we want to improve our eyes, so keep that in mind. Every time you're doing a study, you're trying to make yourself better at spotting something. So you can go back to this and say specifically that in this animation study, I'm only going to be looking at arcs. I'm only going to be looking at how the arms are moving, and do that as your study for that particular project, and then move on to the next one. Make sure what you've learnt there, you apply it into your work, and you just keep going and keep going and keep going, and the next thing you know, you're just gonna be really good. And well, yeah, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So we want to improve our eyes. Yeah, so the 12 principles of animation, here they are listed out. You usually cannot memorize these because they are they're a lot, but as you work more and more, you start to get a feel for what they are. So as we go along, we're going to be looking at squash and stretch, the way our guys squash and stretch. Now something I wanted to point out here before we go too far is that squash and stretch is something you feel and not necessarily see. Same thing goes with anticipation, which is number 2. When something squashes or stretches, it's doing it not just to look cool, to look fancy. It's doing it to build energy and to anticipate what's coming. And a good idea of how to see this build-up of energy is before someone can jump, they're going to have to squash down and then jump. And the jump itself is going to be the stretch. So we don't have to force that in. That's already happening naturally. Follow through and overlap, we're definitely going to look at that. Easing, arcs, secondary action, not so much on secondary action. Timing, definitely. Exaggeration, yes. And solid drawing, which is going to be gestures as well. So that's something very important today. And appeal, which applies to everything. So let's get started and talk about gestures and poses. So probably pop open Blender now, and this is probably the setup I had ready for this class here, but I'm going to use this to just quickly draw on top and show you the concept that I'm talking about. Old school Wacom here that has served me very well over the years, and so I'm going to be using it to quickly show you guys what I mean when I'm talking about gestures. And for the most part, you usually want to have it plugged in. There we go. Alright, so here it is. What I'm going to be using. And you know what? Yeah. So let me get started explaining what we mean by gestures. So gestures are how is like a drawing technique in which we sort of bring out the pose and the direction, like someone's facing. What is it about this person that is making them look as they are? That sounds pretty weird right now, but it's gonna make sense in a bit. So if I take a look at I should have a I kind of mixed up my ports here. There we go. So I can introduce you to Epic Pen, which is a really cool application for drawing on top of what you're working on. So gestures are basically you trying to get the motion, the energy, the force that's happening inside this person's body, and that's usually what someone's eyes sees. Our eyes are so good at seeing gestures and seeing where energy is going. A really random fact about our eyes and why we can usually spot CG is because we can tell the weight of an object just after seeing like 2 or 3 frames of it. And you can usually start to tell, like, you can see weight shifts, and you can see stuff rotating and moving, and you can decide how much they weigh, and from that you can tell how fast they're moving, and you start to figure out which direction they're moving in. So you can kind of tell, like, something's going to the left. If someone does this, you know, oh, he's about to go to the right. You can see that anticipation. So that's why anticipation is so important in animation, because our eyes are used to seeing that weight moving. So you want to anticipate so that even our brains start doing that math in advance. Our intuition does that math in advance, that something is happening. So you can look at this lady right now and you can almost instantly tell, like, this arm is sort of moving that way, and I guess this one is probably going this way. Okay, I can tell that because of the cloth. And you can see from also the little strings here the sort of motion she's been going through, but also from, and that means they're crossed, so it means she's probably doing a twisting motion going in this direction. You can already tell that motion just from looking at it, and your brain has already done that math, but now your brain has already done that math, but your eyes now need to be able to see this and artistically pick them out and consciously tell that that's what that is. So usually gestures are drawn in different styles. There is just some important things you need to be looking out for, and the first is the line of action. So line of action is the general feel of how the motion is going. So for this person, it's usually down the spine, so you can say that is the line of action, and you can see it's curved this way, and so it's like a force going in this direction. So that's kind of informing us in the process of figuring out what's happening in the picture. It's kind of informing our minds that, okay, that she's curved this way, so the force is this way, so she must be moving in this direction or rotating in a certain direction. I see that instantly. So let me clear this out. That's the first thing you want to look at, the line of action. There's different, as I said, there's different ways of drawing, so probably I should show you the styles that I tend to use. Depending on the situation and depending on what I'm looking for, I usually do different things. So, oops, sometimes you draw instead of click. So I usually have about 4 styles that I use to draw gestures. And the first is to draw the head. Let's get this lady back in here so that we can do gestures with her. Oops, Chrome doesn't like when I drag with the Wacom. I don't know why. Okay, so first you draw the head, and then you draw in the line of action as you see it. And then the next thing we're looking for is the shoulders and the hips. Now these do a very specific thing. They always go in opposite directions. When the shoulders are this way, the hips are going to be this way, always. And this is simply a matter of how our spine and our shoulders are rigged. The way, yes, I just said we are rigged. The way we are rigged so that we can be animated is that our spine is a pipe of sorts, a flexible pipe. So if you put a stiff stick on this side and another stiff stick on this side, anytime this flexes in any direction, the top will always go in the opposite direction of what the bottom is doing. It's just like a sort of obvious physics thing, and it's something you can't unsee once you see it, but that's what happens with the spine. So when you have someone with their hips like this and then their shoulders like this, yet they're bent this way, your eyes are just like, what? Hold on, I've never like your eyes have literally never seen anything like that before, because it's not possible. And the instant conclusion it's going to come up with is, well, whatever we're looking at must be broken or doesn't work the way we're used to it working. Maybe the spine is disconnected somewhere. Get our work looking really dope. This is the easiest method to get that started. So if you really want to study posing and gestures, check out what sculptors were doing, especially in these old days. They were doing a lot of this sort of contrapasta idea, and they contrapposto, I don't know why I say it's contrapposto. So check that out. Alright, so let's get back to that gesture of this chick. So yeah, and apparently we're gonna do some short analysis after this. It's gonna be a long one, eh? But it's cool. I am not complaining. Alright, so we drawing the head, getting the shoulder. No, drawing the line of action, getting the shoulder, getting the hips where you think they are. And then now you can kind of figure out where everything else is from here. And this line doesn't necessarily have to be followed, because we're going to, draw in the legs like this. Crossing it, they need to cross each other, but I didn't do that, but that's okay. Oh man, I probably should have warmed up before this. Feeling already so iffy. So something like that. And so we've not really captured the gesture, have we? No, there's a real curve here, but once you start adding in the details, you realize the curve gets lost. And that's where this principle of exaggeration comes from. It's just to remind you that when you're working in in drawings, just exaggerate it, because once those details come in, you're going to lose a lot. So you'd rather exaggerate and bring it back than not exaggerate and lose information. So this is the first style. That's the first style that you can use to draw. There's the just drawing the, I usually draw the top part like this, bottom part like this, a sort of semicircle for the torso, and then these sort of triangles for the bottom, for the legs. And proportions usually suck though, but most of the time I get what I need out of the image. Then you can draw like a line in the middle to show where the center lines are. That's style number one. The second one is a bit more detailed. This is based on a short character course I did on Udemy, which turned out to be very helpful when I was starting out. So you draw the rib cage, draw the belly in there, and then the hips are like this semicircle, and they go, and then for the legs you draw these pipe shapes. They have to be opposite. These have to be opposite of each other, and then this down one has to be the opposite of this one up here. So kind of like that. Then you can draw in the legs. So same goes for the arms. Kinda sorry comic guys, I know I'm butchering this, but something like that. This one is really nice if you're looking to detail it later or something, and it's also good for drawing just drawing details and showing if it's a male or female. More rounded top and wider hips, wider thighs here, and you get a female shape. I'll draw something like a curve like this, and then a curve like that, and this, and a curve like this, and then a curve like that. And it just looks a bit better than using straight lines. So those are the different ways that you can draw gestures. You're free to do it any style you want, but when it comes to posing, especially when you're looking for poses that you're going to apply to, say, a character or anything, you want to make sure that you want to make sure that you can see where the shoulders are, where the hips are, and what this line of action is doing. Those are the most important things. The second most important thing would be the direction the body is facing, the rotations. This style is particularly good for telling rotations, because it's kind of like it has faces, so you can tell this is the front, this is the side. Whereas with these, it's easy to get something that looks like what's called a frog on a what's it called? It's like a frog on a biology table or something. It's just completely flat and spread out, and the chest is flat to the screen, the face is flat to the screen. Not necessarily flat. The head you can get away with it, but the arms they're not really backwards or forwards. They're just there, flat on a plane. So with these stick drawings, it's very easy to get caught up in that, but with these ones with the pipes, it's a bit easier to get that foreshortening, where you have something becomes shorter just because it's closer to the screen, but it's still whatever size it is. So when you're looking at gestures now in real life, you want to look at these. You want to look at the head, draw the line of action, get the shoulder, the top bit, and then the bottom bit, and then we can draw where we think this leg is going, and this other one, I'm gonna show you something interesting that happens with these. So you're done. You're like, cool. I'm happy with that result. Let me get rid of this, and then I'll move this guy behind the drawing. And what you'll say, you kind of notice that the same thing that I did before is happening. The pose has disappeared. It doesn't look nearly as energetic as what we had before. So what's happening? This is just what art is. This is the problem with some of these things. The way the volumes, some of these lines I could say are not exactly where they should be, but those little errors and those little missteps that come from just the fact that it's being drawn, that it's going through my eyes, going through my mind, and then coming to my hand and being drawn. There's like broken telephone happening on the way. So it becomes very hard for it to look exactly the same. And so in order to make our eyes and hands communicate the same way, and to be able, for my eyes to be able to see something and for my hand to be able to draw it, that's why we do these studies. That's why we practice and practice and practice and practice, because that's what art is. It's just practicing over and over again until these guys are talking properly and your hand is doing whatever you want it to do. So there's that's skill wise, but in terms of perception, including for the audience, what about you who's a viewer, and let's say you don't know anything about art, you can still see that the image did not translate very well. And so that's where exaggeration comes in. One of the better ways to get away with this, rather than stressing about learning how to do it perfectly, is to learn how to exaggerate it every time. So let me do it again. I'm gonna do it again. This time I'll try exaggerate the pose, and the best way for me to do that would be to draw it without drawing on top. So let me clear this out, and I'll draw it with Epic Pen again. Let's say there's the head. So we've seen twice now that it's not coming out the way we want. We want it this way. That's what I was seeing before. No, not really. So let's go even further. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Then we'll put in the shoulder. Shoulder should be like that. When I see this hip, the hip is like this, but it's also not directly below the body. It's slightly off to the side, something like that. That's already looking pretty strange, but let's see where this is going. Then we'll draw in this part of the body, but instead of drawing with straight lines, I'll try and curve them a little bit. Same on this side, and then here where it joins, I usually draw just another set of lines. Usually helps me see twists as well. And then the butt is over here. Oops. Too big. And then we can draw their legs in now. So got the spine in there, but remember, it's not necessarily going like that. We're now going like this. So these legs are now, I probably shouldn't have deleted the other one. Could compare. Whoops. It's actually the back leg. This is the front leg. And this arm. So that looks a bit ridiculous, but I think you get the idea. I think it's this curve now translates a lot better from what we had here before. So exaggeration and gestures are very, very important. Alright, cool. So that's gestures. What about the clips? Are we ready to go into the clips? I think we're ready to go into the clips. So now that we understand the general idea of gestures, the general idea of exaggeration, and the 12 principles of we've discussed, let's go into talking about how to animate this. Oops. Just actually, sorry. Before we get into that, I had a challenge for you guys. Check out this gesture. Try and draw that yourself, and this one as well. They're pretty cool. So in this one, you can see line of action. Show the head. Line of action. Shoulder is here. Shoulder is going this way, so waist goes this way. And then you can draw in the rest of the stuff. And the other one. Draw a line of action, so head is here. So would it be this way, or this way, or this way? It could be any of those actually, depending on how you look at it. So for me, from what I drew before, you can see my line of action tends to go an average between the two. Shoulder is like this, so hips will be like this. So they sort of pinch in this direction, and then you can draw in the rest of it. Anyway, try that out yourself. The site is sketchdaily.net. Just find something and try it out for yourself. Try drawing the gestures. You'll find that you pick up on those rotations of the top part and the bottom part, and how the arms are rotated. Once you get a feel for those, it becomes a lot easier applying it into animation.